एकं अक्षरं हृदि निरन्तरं भासते लिख्यते कथम्। हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्झता आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयतत्कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम्। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः विभाति स्वयम्। Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsangh from Ramanacentre Center for Learning. As usual, we will be reading from the work of Muruganar Swamigal, Guruvachika Kovai. We will be reading 2 verses, each verse reading followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that will be followed by a 10-minute practice of Atma Ucharan. After these 2 segments of reading, meditation on meaning, and practice of Atma Ucharan are completed, there will be a summing up by our President, Dr. Sharada, and that will be followed by the Sri Ramanastotram chanting offering by Vaibhavji and Prarthana. Today, as in last week, because of the COVID situation anticipated, we have not asked the devotees to come, so therefore we will be offering the Ashtottara Japa itself along with Atma Ucharan during that time. We begin this evening satsang by reading the first verse selected for us, verse number 320. This is from the segment Investigation into Truth. The other two segments that follow are Meditation on the Truth and Experience or Anubhava of the Truth. This is in Investigation into Truth. There is this sub-segment. The sub-segment is worshipping the Guru, worshipping Bhagavan. 320 is the last verse in that sub-segment. Like a cataract upon the eye, the ego view plays tricks on us. Like a cataract on the eye, the ego view plays tricks on us, masquerading as being consciousness, even as it moves about as the sentient body. Like a cataract upon the eye, the ego view plays tricks on us, masquerading as being consciousness, even as it moves about as the insentient body. To prevent its formation and growth. To prevent its formation and growth is puja to the graceful twin lotus feet of the Guru, who exists and shines as the transcendental firmament. To prevent, so Bhagavan is giving us the blessing that our offering of the mantra japa and the practice of Atmacharan during that time is adequate puja. That is the grace of Bhagavan, how he blesses us. In whatever small way we worship him. To prevent the formation of the ego and the growth of the ego is puja to the graceful twin lotus feet of the Guru, who exists and shines as the transcendental firmament. Bhagavan is the existence consciousness, the true being. Like a cataract on the eye, the clear eye, by the formation of the cataract, its vision is obstructed, its vision is distorted in many ways by the cataract that is formed, especially the ego, the I am the body identity of the consciousness is itself called as veiling and the mind and the world that are projected is called as the projection from that veiling, avarana and vikshepa. Avarana is the veiling like a cataract, and vikshepa is projection through that veiling and seeing that which is as that which is not. Seeing the existence consciousness as the body and the world is to see through the cataract of the ego. So, like a cataract upon the eye, the ego view plays tricks on us, masquerading as being consciousness. It is not completely bereft of the consciousness that I am, but it is the consciousness distorted as I am this body, or I am this identity called Nandakumar. I am this identity that I have taken on as a role. So the veiling distorts, but is not completely rid of the I am. Therefore, it masquerades as the feeling I am. There is this feeling that we human beings are better off because there is some self-awareness much better than many of the animals, and of course apparently better than the plants and what other matter the world is made of. We have this self-awareness that I am and I am these contents, but that Bhagavan says is cataract, the masquerading of existence consciousness as all these identities. So what is real puja? Bhagavan says the real puja is to remove this masquerade, is to remove this cataract. How to remove its formation? The method of removing its formation is, Bhagavan says in Appala Patu, Nanalla Ainkosha Kshetramidil Vada Nanenum Manama Dhanya Ulundai Nanaranyana Vichara Tirigai Nanalla Endre Udaitu Pudithu. In all the 5 koshas, by identity, with the ignorance, with the intellect, with the mind, with the breath and the sensory body, the identity, it keeps growing. Nanalla Ainkosa Kshetram, it is called as Kshetram, and the knower is called as Kshetrajna, and because of Aviveka, we identify one with the other, like Taptachami Karapaya, that is like the iron ball in which the fire is there. We feel that the fire has taken the form of the ball. Like that, consciousness has welded itself with the sensory feelings. And therefore, the Viveka is to separate this consciousness from that by the quest who am I? Nanalla Ainkosa Kshetramidil Vada Tanenum Manamam Dhanya Ulunde. The ego keeps not only forming but growing because of inattention, because of ignorance, because of false identity with this body, breath, mind, intellect and the ignorance. It keeps growing. To prevent this from forming and growing, Nanyar and Jnana Vichara Tirigai, in the relentless practice of who am I, in the Dinamahak Kankan, Tirungi Ahamdane Dinamahak Kankan, day and night, day after day, moment after moment, relentlessly keep your attention on who am I, from where this I is arising. Theriyum endrane Arunachala, the self will reveal itself. When the growth and the formation of the ego, the cataract is prevented at its very source, that is the adequate puja to our Sadguru, to our Bhagavan, to the 2 feet of our Bhagavan, who exists as the existence consciousness, the transcendent firmament, the sky, the Akasha, firmament is Akasha, transcendent means unattached to anything in creation. Shiva is said to be the one who, though the creation thrives in his presence, he himself has not been affected in the least as the Sakshi. It has been untouched. That is why there is always the moksha to us. Whenever we have fear of anything, it is a manifestation of fear of non-existence. That is why in Ulladinarpadu, Bhagavan says, Mrityunjayam Mrityubhyashritahu. Whom should we pray to? Except to the Mrityunjaya, who is transcendent, who has transcended birth and death. To him alone we should pray. What is the point in recounting the tales of all those who are subject to birth and death, all the matters subject to birth and death? No point. Let us only exchange the Satcharita of the great ones, the immortal ones like Bhagavan, Karunachala, and revel in those stories about the feet of the transcendental ones, the ones who are immortal and cross the limitations of birth and death. To their holy feet, let our offering of Atmavicharam be. Let us practice self-inquiry for 10 minutes. Revathi, you will set the time for us. नमो भगवते श्री Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang by taking up the second verse selected. It's verse number 820. This is from the segment Meditation on the Truth. The sub-segment is Not Uttering Falsehood. Meditation on the Truth. 820. Not Uttering Falsehood. Not keeping your word by refusing to give someone something that you have previously promised to hand over is a much greater mistake than wholeheartedly instructing an unfit person that Atma Swarupa is the supreme reality. I'll read that again. Then there is a note. There are a few notes which we will read. The verse is not keeping your word by refusing to give someone something that you have previously promised to hand over is a much greater mistake than wholeheartedly instructing an unfit person that Atma Swarupa is the supreme reality. They have hit two birds with one stone. The notes go like this. First, there is a note by Muruganar Swamigal. Since proclaiming the highest teachings to those who cannot understand them and who might therefore misinterpret them is also regarded as being incorrect behavior, this verse compares two inappropriate acts of behavior and concludes that not keeping one's word is worse. So, to instruct, Bhagavad Gita also wants this to instruct those who are unfit to listen to the mantram or unfit to listen to the upadesham that Atma Swarupa is the supreme reality is definitely something wrong, is incorrect behavior. But to promise somebody something and not keep up your word is even worse behavior than that, is the verse. Let us see the two more notes that have been given to us. One is from Sri Ramana Reminiscences. Referring to Sri Krishna's description of his gospel as the supreme secret, which should be disclosed only to his true devotees and never to others, Sri Bhagavan explained the doctrine of adhikara, fitness. If the highest truth is taught to the unworthy, it is bound to be perverted and abused. In fact, asuras like Hiranyakashipu were also Brahmavadins, expounders of the Brahman. They too declared, I am Brahman, I am God. Only by the I they meant their ego. So they recognized no higher authority than their own ego and felt free to commit any kind of sin. Indiscriminate preaching of the highest truth, irrespective of the disciples' fitness, will therefore spell disaster and is forbidden by the Lord. That is the first. The lower error is accounted first. Muruganar Swami. If it is not possible for you to do something, do not out of an obligation born of friendship give your word and then go back on it. So here the primary error is being addressed by Muruganatha Swamigal. If it is not possible for you to do something, Anniyar Karyat Agandri, says Bhagavan. Take care of what commitments you have given to the Supreme to go and reach it. Don't have this arrogance that you are the one who is helping another and make commitments which you will not be able to meet. If it is not possible for you to do something, do not, out of an obligation born of friendship, give your word and then go back on it. It is the proper conduct of the wise who are acting according to Dharma to say at the outset that it is not possible to do it, even if this violates this obligation derived from friendship. There is a Naladiya quoted, "Dame whose arms are stacked with bangles, it is no fault to refuse that which is not within one's power to give. That is the way of the world. But to prolong the act of giving and then fail to give, so that the desire of it fades in the one whom it is promised, is worse than the ingratitude of one who betrays a kindness done to him." So the Naladiya says that if one has received kindness, obviously one has to return the same. If somebody fails in that kind of basic behavioral requirement in ethics, it is the same as unknowingly promising, inattentively promising something which you cannot do, and then failing to keep up the promise is something like that. Therefore, the Anniyar Karyat Agandriyat is the key aspect in Atma Vicharam. And see, the best puja to Bhagavan himself is to whom we make the promise that we will do sadhana. To Bhagavan, the Guru, the implicit promise that the sadhaka makes is, I will sincerely try and do the sadhana. Now, when we go back on it, it is inappropriate behavior, because that promise is implicit in taking Bhagavan as Guru. To follow his teachings and practice is implicit, is a promise implicit in that. When we go back on it, now that promise is fulfilled by Atma Vicharam, says Bhagavan. That is, the promise to the Guru is fulfilled by doing Atma Vicharam. That is the adequate puja, that is what we saw. Therefore, this takes care of everything. The practice of Atma Vicharam takes care of everything. So be very careful in what promises you make, because what can the promises do? The promises, especially those which will be impossible for us to keep, will keep us going outward. In the fulfillment of the promise, we will keep going outward, and the failure to keep up the promise will leave a deep regret in us. All this will have to be faced while going towards the self. All those problems are eliminated by saying that do not make promises that you cannot keep up. And if you have made some promise, try to keep it up. That itself is dharma. That is why this segment is called not uttering falsehood. Not uttering falsehood is, first of all, telling something that is false to you. Secondly, making promises which you have no capacity to keep. That is also falsehood. Exaggeration is falsehood. Saying something as something greater than what it actually is, that is falsehood. So the falsehood can come in many ways. So whenever we make a commitment, we should be aware of whether we can do this in the time and in the skill set and in the resources that are available to us. That attention is required, and then alone the commitment is to be made, because by going back on commitment and not fulfilling that adharma, which is far greater than inattentive and indiscriminate spreading of the Upadesham, the highest Brahmastram, to those who are unfit. This, the making of promise and not keeping it, is far greater, says Bhagavan, because it makes us go outward. So the outwardness is curbed in the initial stage itself by Bhagavan by asking us to be very attentive. Don't go on memory mode while making promises to others that he will do this or he will do that. Keep it on live mode. Keep the attention on live mode. And this process of not making incapable commitments is easily done if one is self-attentive. If one keeps self-attention, the attention to who am I or the source from which the I arises, then each thought that arises is so clearly seen. Now, the inappropriate commitments and promises arise because we don't see in our hurried commitments, we don't see what thought it is that we are committing, what promise it is we are making. Whereas in self-attention, each thought that arises is seen in clarity in the light of Bhagavan's grace, and then what Bhagavan allows as our capability, that commitment alone is made so that the main task, the primary task of having come to Bhagavan, which is abiding in the self, is not forgotten, is not lost sight of. So what is the clue given by Bhagavan here? That in Vyavahara, in our outer relationships, be very attentive as to what promises we are making, what commitments we keep. Just because we feel we are friends, we should not be inattentive and make indiscriminate commitments which will keep us outward going for a long time and which will block us from turning inward and offering ourselves to the self. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us practice the offering of the I to the self, in which each thought that arises from the source is clearly seen. And in that Guru's grace, in that Sannidhi only, that clarity only, one's Vyavahara, the outward relationships, are also maintained. That's why one of the devotees in the book reading of Western readers, he says, the Atma Vicharam, it not only took me to Bhagavan the self, it also automatically kept my outer relationships in proper light. I was always related in the outer world from out of self-content, not to please others, out of self-content, out of self-awareness. There was also respect for others because each of them is only the Purna Vastu. In this, the self-attention, there is self-respect, there is respect for others. At the same time, there is an awareness which prevents the unnecessary commitments, which are anyway an obstruction to abiding in the self. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice of Atmacharan for 10 minutes. Renatma, you can help us out. Bhagavate Shri Ramana. I request our President, Dr. Sharma, to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. As I was listening to the words of Bhagavan in Guru Vachaka Kovai, and of course, by His grace, He has allowed us to do the practice, to fulfill the promise, as Nandakumarji said. But then a question did arise in my mind. Two thoughts came to me primarily. One, I wondered about Bhagavan and all his devotees. Did they make any promises to anyone? Did they share the truth with anyone who was unfit? They did not move at all because they were or they are always abiding in the self. So one who is abiding in the self is neither making any promise to anyone else because there is no other for such a one to make a promise to. And therefore, such a one who is abiding in the self cannot betray anyone at any point of time. So, how does the sharing happen? It happens because when that person is abiding in the self, everyone is included in that very self, and therefore the sharing happens spontaneously and automatically. And since there is no other again, there is no question of sharing it with anyone who is less or who is not fit. There is no other at all. This is how Bhagavan and the ones blessed by Bhagavan through his path of self-inquiry and through the devotion are having the sharing. But what about others, or what about one who may be making a promise? This was my question to myself. I cannot claim that I am abiding steadily in the self. So I'm still on the path, if I say, then I may wantonly, not purposefully, but by error, I might not fulfill some of the promises, or I might end up sharing my thoughts or whatever I know with somebody whom I may not have judged. So what is the sadhana for me? Nandakumarji pointed out that it was to try and do more of self-inquiry, try to be more with self-inquiry, which is described of Bhagavan in his Sahasranamam as Sarvaramba Parityagi. He does not start anything. Things happen, he does not start anything. And this connects with our first Upadesha of the day, where Bhagavan says that even before the ego rises, to cut it is the offering to the Guru. So Bhagavan is actually telling us that every thought is a kind of a promise which we are making to ourselves. It may not be to anyone else. And we are our first friend also, according to Bhagavad Gita. We are our first friend. And by making a promise to ourselves, which we may or may not be able to keep, we are also letting ourselves down. So the best way would be not to start something, not to start a thought, to try and cut it even as it rises. And of course, a thought means that which is rising with identity, that which is linked with that ego, which is the cataract, which is the veiler. So anything that rises with identity is to be questioned by the grace of Bhagavan. Is it possible for us to do it? Maybe another question which comes to some of our minds. We are making efforts, but we seem to be failing in that effort also. We seem to be failing. There is a Hindi song which says, "Khud se jo wada kiya tha, wo nibhaya na gaya." Khud se jo vada, I made a promise to myself. That's why Nandakumarji beautifully said that it's a promise to the Guru or it's a promise to myself. I made a promise to myself and I am not able to keep up the promise. So, what does one do? Then, of course, there is the prayer to the Sadguru, and one finds that in another way, though Bhagavan is Sarvarambha Parityagi, he has also made a promise. He has made a promise in Akshara Manamale. He has actually communicated the promise of Arunachala to the world at large by saying, Tirumbiyahandane dinamaha kankan teriyum. Yendranai Arunachala. So you said that if somebody is making any sincere effort to get back to the self, by continuously, to the extent possible, turning back towards the self, then the self will be revealed. And of course, Bhagavan also gives a concession to all of us by saying, Velivitte unsayal veruttidadun arul velivitte ennaikka Arunachala. I have revealed your secret. Because Bhagavan has come to reveal the secret of Arunachala, the greatest secret. That which Nandakumarji pointed out to us in Bhagavad Gita is said to be the Rahasya, the great Rahasya, the Atma Rahasya. Bhagavan has made it public. He has made it public. So further, none of us have any, in one sense, we don't have to hold ourselves responsible. Of course, simultaneously holding ourselves responsible, but to the extent that it happens by his will alone, it happens. And that is he says that it has been broadcast so that everyone can turn back and abide in the self. So what is the promise that Bhagavan is giving to us? He is giving us a promise. Whether we are failing in our promises or not, we do not know. We may fail, we may fall, but Bhagavan does not fail. So we can rest assured that he, being our best friend, and he will never fail in his promise to a friend, therefore he will fulfill his promise to us to take us back to the source and to help us to abide there firmly. That is his promise and that is our hope. Because there is one devotee who, during Bhagavan's last days, before his Mahanirvana, actually no one was allowed to approach Bhagavan. And he threw a small piece of paper, he had written something, he threw it at Bhagavan, literally. And Bhagavan read it and he saw it was asking, is there hope? And Bhagavan said, yes, there is hope. So that is also Bhagavan's promise. That is Bhagavan's promise is, yes, there is hope. To another he has said, others have succeeded, why not you? So he has always given us hope. And I see that as the reverse of this verse. When it may be the worst act to let down a promise, we can see the reverse of it as well. While it is a warning to us to try and keep our promises, it can also be our hope in our moments when we are down and out and we wonder whether we are fit, whether we can keep or we cannot keep our promises, whether we can reach, we cannot reach. When we are having self-doubt, we can drop all that and put our faith in Bhagavan's promise, where he bears all our burdens and he is taking us, as Sadhu Swami said, கொண்டு செல்வாரே ஒரு தினம் இதய குகையில் ரமண குருநாதன். ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணா.
Namo Ramanacentre.
நமோ ரமண சார்.
So now we are going to offer the Ashtotram to Bhagavan. So whereby our outwardness in promises and actions are all offered to him in surrender. That is one way. And the Atma Ucharam is the other way he has given to prevent the outwardness. So Vaibhavji and Pratnama will help us by chanting the Ashtotram. And we can all look at who is the listener. There is a small incident with Seshadri Swamigal, where Seshadri Swamigal is invited for a lunch. And as usual, he behaves by putting food here, there, and the co-invitee is a great Pandit. This invitation is from HMR. And during the food, seeing Seshadri Swamigal's behavior, the Pandit says, when is this person, after how many janmas he is going to get mukti, I don't know, he says. And Seshadri Swamigal digests that also. And after the time comes for leaving, Seshadri Swamigal looks at the Pandit and says, if you look at who had the food, who is the eater, then the mukti is there available then itself, he says, and he walks out. Like that, Bhagavan gives us freedom from this complex situation by these two methods of surrender and Atmaucharam. Let Vaibhavji and Pratnama help us in the holding of Bhagavan in surrender, and let us practice who is the listener of Ashtotram. Namo Ramana, Vaibhavji.
नमो रमण. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः. ॐ महौजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोत्थिताय नमः. ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः. ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः. ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः. ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः. ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः. ॐ तीव्राय नमः. ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः. ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः. ॐ पितृरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः. ॐ तपोमयाय नमः. ॐ उदासीनाय नमः. ॐ महायोगिने नमः. ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः. ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः. ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः. ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः. ॐ सवित्रे नमः. ॐ स्थिराय नमः. ॐ तपःक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः. ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः. ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ च्यूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजितचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्बोधस्कन्धाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ मृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ षोडादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजलिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवश तादात्म्यभावङ्गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वदवीर नित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्यैकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
Namo
Namo Ramana sir.